I'm in the presence of some illustrious women here today, and we'd like to tell a little bit of the story of Mother Teresa O'Neill. In remote preparation for Summerfest, and to at least have a recorded video story of Mother Teresa. And I've asked Sister Herbert, Sister Mary of the Angels, Sister Daniel, and Sister Thomasina to join me today in telling the story of Mother Teresa, our co-foundress. I've asked them to tell a little bit about themselves, and that's where we'll start. So, Sister Herbert, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, congregation?
All right. I was born April 15, 1903. I entered the convent February 2nd, 1923. I received the habit August 15, 1923, and made my first vows 1925. Now, I did not ever have a personal conversation with Mother Teresa, but I knew who she was, a beautiful little lady, very composed, a very kind person, one that you wouldn't be afraid to talk to, although I never had the privilege, and respect with everybody. She was very keen, and I have experience, I have a reason for saying that, because we had a lot of sisters, naturally, in the old chapel there, and we were there for Mass in the morning, and Mother Teresa having the last seat on the right in the chapel, met one of the sisters in the afternoon, and she said, "Sister, I missed you from the community Mass this morning." Now, how could she, unless she was very keen, know that she wasn't there? Her place was empty, so she's over there. So I don't know what else. I can't, only a school teacher, an experienced school teacher could read what I wrote last night. And I'm going to ask Sister Mary of the Angels, she can do it, whatever else I have there.
Well, while we're waiting for Sister Mary of the Angels to check out Sister Herbert's notes, we know that Mother Teresa was born in 1843 and she died in 1926.
Yes.
So Sister Herbert was in the congregation for about 3 years when Mother Teresa died.
But after I left here in 1924, I went with Mother Jerome to Grogan, and that began my 48 years of school teaching. And I didn't, of course, I didn't know her after that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want to add,
Sister Herbert wrote that she demanded obedience, and the rules were always kept under her guidance. And when the silence prayer rang at 8:45, not a sound was heard throughout the house. She was very keen about silence for our self-welfare. And no one was allowed to go into another sister's room unless the sister was present. And she always said, if you met a sister in the corridor, you whispered to her. You didn't speak out loud.
Right.
And it was a whispering campaign throughout the house. And she was a dear, tiny little woman, with full of vision and charity. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Herbert. Sister Amata has joined us. Sister also was here when Mother Teresa was alive. So, Sister, could you wheel in? Having this conversation about Mother Teresa.
Yes.
And we're happy to have you join us. Could you tell us a little bit about Mother Teresa?
Well, I'll read what I wrote up here.
Sure, fine.
Mother Teresa O'Neill, always that, was sweet and kind to each sister. When the sisters had to do an errand outside, she was always waiting at the door to give each one her blessing, and it was a beautiful blessing. I visited with her when I entered, but but was sent out on the missions after that. It was she who was to give leadership and formative vision to the community, and whose spirit and influence were to continue to this day.
Thank you. Thank you. Sister Martha, when, do you want to tell us when you were born and when you entered the
Born in
congregation?
1902,
1902, and when did you enter the congregation?
1925, 1925, we were in the same band,
Okay,
1925.
very
And I
good.
was 21 years old.
And 21 years
I
old.
had to wait because my father wanted me to go, but my mother didn't. She had nobody to clean the big nickel on the stove when I went.
Thank you. And Sister Thomasina, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and then about Mother Teresa, your relationship with her?
I'm having trouble with my voice
Okay.
today.
You take your time.
I was born in 1907, entered in 1925,
Okay.
and still
And-
here.
And you just turned 90 this month, right?
Right.
Didn't you just have a birthday this month?
Oh, yes.
Ah.
So I'm 90, of course. My work was on music.
Uh-huh.
The one interesting story that I have about Mother Teresa, I think is beautiful.
It's okay, take your time.
I told my novice mistress, Sister Dominica, that I wanted to go to the foreign missions when I was professed. She told Mother Teresa apparently, and I was sent for to come to Mother Teresa's office. So I went. She was sitting, waiting for me. She said, I understand you want to go to foreign missions. I said, yes. She said, do you realize we have taken half your family from your parents? I said, yes. She said, do you think we're going to send you off to a foreign land and deprive them of seeing you and visiting with you? Of course, I didn't answer. She said, while I'm living, you will not go on foreign missions. You will stay right here for your parents' sake. I thought that was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I did get the chance to go
You went to Brazil later on.
years later.
And we were well established by that time in Jamaica, weren't we? In the West Indies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went in 1950, see,
Uh-huh.
after a couple of years after my father died,
I see.
and mother had died previously. Mother Teresa was a dear friend of my mother's, so she always was very friendly and kind when she'd meet us
Yes.
talking about my mother.
Yeah.
But I can't add to
At this time. Okay, thank you.
I'm
Thanks.
sorry.
That's okay.
It's my trouble.
It's very clear. And how about we move now to Sister Daniel, who went to the foreign missions?
My first encounter with Reverend Mother Teresa O'Neill was in February 1924, when I entered the community of the Allegany Franciscans. I was then at the age of 17. My impression of Mother Teresa was that she was a gentle lady. Her voice was soft, her manner sweet. Her sweet voice and gentle manner were accompanied by a gentle firmness, so that when something was to be done, it was to be done. The following year, 1925, she sent me to Jamaica. I believe she forgot I was there because I remained 17 years. And she had gone on. My next encounter was in 1926, when we arrived the day before the funeral of Reverend Mother Teresa. And I was allowed to sit up with the other novices with the body all night at the wake. I haven't very much more to say because there was a big distance between Allegany, New York, and Jamaica, West Indies. But my lasting impression was that she was a gentle, sweet person, and very much like the stories we know of St. Francis.
Well, thank you. You didn't tell us a little bit about yourself. You were born in?
I was born in 1906, and I entered February 2nd, 1924.
Okay.
I went to Jamaica as a second-year novice.
Well, thank you. And now Sister Mary of the Angels?
I was born in February 1908, and I was sent down to St. Elizabeth's for Reformation as a junior. And that's when I first met Mother Teresa. And Mother Bernadine sort of adopted me because my name also was Bernadine. So she was my mentor. And she realized that I might have a vocation. She fostered it. So she made appointments with me to talk to Mother Teresa. I had several visits with Mother Teresa. I found her a very, very unusual, tiny person. There was a marvelous blend of kindness, humility, and courage in her tiny body. A few examples of her kindness. Her first missions were Sullivan Street and Winstead, where there were many poor little Italian children. And she sent sisters there. And then also another example of her kindness, she always tipped the Erie porters more than anybody else. They loved the little lady up on the hill. Any sisters that went on the train, she said, be sure and give this to the porter. And also, a certain Joe Norton, an old man, used to bring movies down here. And she would come and sit with the girls in the academy to show her appreciation to Joe. Many times I sat back of her at the movies. And then she always had a certain charism about her, which would attract one to her. She was very humble. She accepted very graciously the general help that Father Pampolo gave. Many things she could have done herself, but she let him guide her for a couple of years. And she always was showed her appreciation. Her courage was evinced by sending sisters to Jamaica, the first congregation to send sisters out of the United States. And that was early in our career. Her faith was immense. All the decisions, conflicts, and privations which she endured with a great love of God. She died a holy and humble death on May 12, 1926. We pray that God's gift of her unusual charism will continue to flourish in our community forever. Amen.
Thank you.
I remember her at the movies. She always had a little child beside her. He was sitting in the back. He was an artist, I guess. I remember that. Yes.
The movies.
When we went to the movies, she always had a little one. Took her up so she could see. I remember that. Yes.
Do you have any other memories of her, of being in her presence?
I had one little thing that she was taking holy water from her font one morning, and it smelled like perfume. And she got the sister rather, that takes care of her room, told her that she smelled perfume in there. And the sister said, yes, I had an empty bottle, she said, of perfume, yeah, but I put holy water in the bottle, but I didn't think it smelled. Take the water out of the font and give me holy water.
Now, did she travel much, do you remember, or hear about?
Yes, she did. She came down to Sullivan Street many times when I was a postman there.
Really?
Yes. That was a business center years ago. Very important.
Sullivan Street.
Sullivan Street, yeah.
But I love her blessing that she gave me when
Yes,
she
she's
went.
very, very
That
important.
was a beautiful blessing. And I also wondered why they didn't continue that. See,
As people would go out on mission, you mean?
the little sisters were going out, yes. It was always a very special blessing that she gave. I remember that so well.
Do you remember yours?
Oh, yes, I remember.
And what was it? Do you remember what she
Well,
said?
I
You can't remember
what
the
she
words,
said,
sure.
but I knew it was a very special one.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't understand why that didn't continue in the community. You know, that they don't give them that blessing.
Maybe we'll rekindle it.
Sister, another example of her generosity. She sent 4 of us down to Sullivan Street, 4 postulants, and she had us come into her room. She said, be gentle but firm. That was her last words. And she gave Sister Eunice money to take us into the dining car. There were no box lunches. We had a chicken dinner. I thought it'd be the last one I've ever had.
Do you remember, around her time, even before the early history of the congregation, we were in Jamaica at that time, and what other missions did we have? We had Winstead and Sullivan Street.
That was the first one,
Mhm.
Sullivan Street. And then Buffalo.
And where did you see our sisters? Did you ever gather with the other sisters?
Well, I was sent down to the academy.
But I mean, all of you, did you ever come together, did you come up during the summers?
Oh, yes.
So Sunday school.
You went to summer school?
I entered in 25. I was professing 27.
Okay.
I made my profession. Well, didn't they put the 2 bands together?
Yes, 2
That's
bands
what I
together.
remember, yes.
Yeah,
They put 227, I remember
that's
that.
right. I was 17.
Because I got my degrees from Mount St. Joseph's over here, my master's and my bachelor's. Mount St. Joseph's, remember?
Oh,
Mount St.
really?
Joseph's?
Uh-huh, that's right.
That's where I got my degrees, were over there.
So some of you gathered there in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I was coming over here. My mother was bringing us to visit.
To visit Mother Teresa
Yes.
and the
And
sisters.
her sister, Mother Thomasina, was the superior.
And is that how you got your name?
Yes.
I must tell something.
She died in 23.
She died in 23 and
I
you went to...
wanted to take my mother's name, but she said, no, we want to keep Thomasina in the family. So
I
I
want to
took
tell you
her.
something about her. She's in my band, you know.
Yeah.
When she entered, she was as cute as could be. And she had bangs as far as here. You remember that? Bangs. And Mother Dominica pushed those bangs back. So she'd push it back, and the next minute they'd be down again. She had beautiful bangs here. I remember that.
I do too.
I have a picture of you.
Now, how many of you are in the same band? The 2 of you,
We're the only 2 of
and
us.
then they merged.
I was with the Margaret, Teresa,
Oh, yeah.
the last one of our band.
We went
There
together.
were 23 of everybody's dead except yours truly.
And we were so mad.
You were mad.
Because they joined our
They joined
band.
up, yeah,
We
I
had
remember
been
that.
2 years
I know.
now, they were just
1 year.
Yeah.
And
We had 2 years.
And they got
You were lucky.
oh, we were mad.
You
Now,
know,
did you have, how many were in your band?
I think it was 25.
yes, I have the picture of our whole band. Yes, yes, well, there were 40 in the beginning. But you remember the Oaks
40.
went home, the Oaks went home, and they sent somebody else home. I remember all that, yeah.
Kept going.
And then they went home. Yeah.
Remember Sister Jane in your band? Sister Jane,
Jane,
when I entered, she was always a Paris firm, she was central. But she had Ann O'Donnell, Sister Helena,
Uh-huh.
O'Donnell. She had us running all over the place, upstairs and downstairs, there, as passionals, we didn't know any better, you know.
We had the largest band ever when we started.
Sure, well, 40.
Well,
That's a
40,
lot.
yeah, I remember
And
that,
we-
but they died down.
Now, can you think of anything else about Mother Teresa that might pertain to her leadership in the congregation or the early years? Some stories that you heard about her? Maybe that you don't know personally, but that you heard?
I heard that she was a teacher and she was going to teach, I don't know whether it's true or not, in the public school. They said she couldn't teach in her habit. So some kind of a little school was made, the first Catholic school in Allegany. Whether that's true or not, I don't know.
I heard that story too, sister.
Uh-huh.
She was supposed to put a secular
She
dress
wouldn't
on.
give up her habit.
Yes, they gave her habit. I remember that. Yes, that was true. Yes, they wanted to put a secular dress on. Yes, I remember that.
Any other stories that you might remember?
The sister,
Remember
Ricardo came to her room one night, she was worried about her because she had a gas stove in her room.
Who did Mother
Mother
Teresa?
Teresa, little gas stove. So she knocked on the door and said, Mother, what about your stove? Do you keep it on all night? And Mother looked at her, she said, you have a hole under your arm. Did you know that in your habit?
She got me in trouble one time. You did.
Did I?
Yes, you were teaching us, and I was cutting up, and you told on me.
Oh, dear, what from
There's a need for reconciliation. After all these years, how many years?
How does she remember?
Well, I ended in 1925, wasn't it 1925?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've been in that many years.
72 years, and we're
72
still
years.
talking about what happened.
She was a little teacher, though.
She was a good teacher.
When I
huh?
was cutting up.
I'd forget that.
Oh, I love Mother
Okay,
I love Mother Dominica.
So, yeah.
And you knew her better,
Oh,
Mother
yeah. Oh,
Dominica.
I'll tell you something that happened. We were in the kitchen, and they had made soap. They used to make their own soap. And they had it in the middle of the floor, and I didn't see it. Mother Dominica was in the corner, but I didn't know, but that wouldn't have made any difference with me, because, you know. Well, I almost fell into the soap. So Mother Dominica, we had a party that afternoon. So when the party was over, this is Mother Dominica, when the party was over, I was talking shoulder. I want to see you, sister. I was like, my gosh, you're going to see me. So I went in, and she said, do you realize, sister, if you had fallen into that soap, what would have happened to you? Why didn't you watch where you were going? Well, I thought she was going to let me out. She kissed me and sent me out. That was all there was to it.
She wanted you to
Oh, she was. I love
be
Mother
careful,
Dominica. I
huh?
love Mother Dominica.
Now, why don't we talk a little bit about Mother Dominica? Do you have any stories about Mother Dominica?
Yes, I remember, who was this little sister that was cutting up all the time? Mother Dominica used to take and bring a needle down and say the rosary with her. Who was that, do you remember? Yes, was I think she went home after. She wouldn't behave herself any, so Mother Dominica a couple of times took her note down and said the rosary with her, thinking it would help her. Remember the Oaks went home?
It was just two sisters.
The two sisters
Any other
went home?
stories about Mother Dominica?
I asked for the name Noreen, and Mother Dominica said, Noreen, it sounds like a love story. You're going to need a good strong saint to anchor on. How about Mary of the Angels? I didn't ask for it.
No,
That's how you
She
got it,
gave it
huh?
to me.
I didn't ask for mine either.
Uh-huh.
I wanted Cecilia after my own sister. No, I couldn't have Cecilia. There was a Cecilia, wasn't there? There were two,
I
were there
know.
two Cecilias, an older one and another, I forget.
I don't know.
And everyone I asked for, they went to the book and looked up Martus, not the Latin say. But so I don't pray to a Martus, because I never could find them. I take a lay perpetual help, that I pray to. But they gave me the name of Marta,
Marta.
has been loved in Latin, has been loved, from past tense.
You're not past tense.
I remember being in the novitiate with Sister Herbert. I was a postulant, and I was the only one kept in. So, after lunch, everyone was supposed to go up to the community room upstairs and sit down in silence and wait for Mother Dominica, Sister Dominica at that time. So, I was a bit lonely because I was the only postulant, and I took myself into the classroom. And what went on in the novitiate wasn't funny. They had the daily dozens, they laughed, they carried on. And all of a sudden, I heard all the chairs move in perfect silence. And I went out thinking I was supposed to go, and I saw Mother Dominica standing in the doorway. And she raised her eyes to heaven, and she said, "My God, is this the way I'm bringing up the novices?" And she turned on her heel and left the whole of us in silence.
Sister, I was at the meeting when they were deciding where everybody was going. I was there when you were told you were going to go to Jamaica. We were at the meeting too, we were at a big meeting. And we were told that we were going to go. And I was there at that
Were the
meeting.
sisters gathered together? You know, you're talking about a meeting. Were the sisters gathered together to
Yeah,
talk
we-
about
we-
things?
We were together at that time. I remember that. And Sister was going to Jamaica. Didn't you have two sisters?
Yes.
I thought so. I thought there were three of you.
Sister Xavier and Sister Vivica.
Yes, God's taken them now.
Sister Xavier and myself was sent
Shit.
to Jamaica.
I remember
Sister
that.
Dominica was in Jamaica from 1934. We followed in 1925.
She was there in 24?
She was on the water when the World War was declared.
Is that right? Wow.
Yes, I remember that meeting. You were there to tell us that.
Wow. I want to thank you. Are there any other stories that you might want to say?
I always heard that Mother Teresa said, when you have a sick sister in your house, you have special blessings from God. She was very careful of the sick.
That's it. Thank you.
She didn't have a private telephone. The telephone was out in the hall outside her room. And we had to take our calls right outside her room also. She never had a telephone in her room.
Well, I
And she
love
got
that.
to be a little stooped because she sat at her desk so much. She was, I don't think she was as tall as I am. I'm not very tall.
Right. Okay. Before we conclude, I just want to stop the tape for a minute. Thank you for being with us today and for telling the stories of Mother Teresa O'Neill and your relationship with her. It's quite a heritage that we have, and as we move forward, we hope that we too can keep her vision and her courage and her care. So her gentleness, all her attributes.